Isn't it great when you see people that become crusaders for the common man? I know that has to warm the cockles of a lot of your hearts and make you feel all warm and fuzzy inside. You're like, wow, somebody that's successful is sitting there and concerned about me. Isn't that awesome? And somebody that's made a living off of getting people to think that way is Suze Orman, and more power to her. If she's able to get enough people to buy into her crap, then so be it. And that's just what it is. It's a bunch of crap. And Suze Orman, like so many others that pretend to actually look out for you, in my opinion, always you have to look deeper and see what their ulterior motives may truly be. Now, Suze Orman is at it again, and she is trying to become this great crusader for credit equality. She basically insists that the system is inherently, unfair, which it is. I will give her that. And that people should have their bank account history reported on their credit reports, and their debit card usage off of those accounts reported on their credit reports, and usage of prepaid debit cards reported on their credit reports. And again, I will emphasize that I agree with her that the system is fundamentally flawed, terribly, and it's set up to be so. It's set up to be inherently unfair. And here's what I mean. If you go and let's say you want to rent an apartment or a house, the landlord or the property owner is going to run your credit. But more often than not, even if you get the place, they're never going to report an account in your payment history on there. Something that you have to pay every single month. Something that could benefit millions of people in trying to establish and build credit, having their rental history report on their credit report. No, you'll just get dinged for the inquiry on your credit report. Now, for some people, if you have great credit and you have a long established period of credit, it's not really going to affect you much if you have that inquiry. But if you don't have any credit at all, or you have very little, you find it very incredibly challenging to get any credit to be able to get a foothold and get yourself started on the path to credit worthiness. And then these companies come in and they will ding your credit with an inquiry that could be a little more damaging than if you actually have a long, well-established credit history. It's the same thing when you get a cell phone or when you have to set up your electrical services, your cable or satellite services, your gas services. They will all, pretty much all, run your credit and then use that sometimes as a determination or basis of whether or not you can get service with them or how much of a deposit you have to have. But at no point in time, on the flip side, will most of these companies sit there and actually do you a favor or benefit of reporting on your credit report. So that way, when you make your payments every month on time, it's actually going to help you long term. It's almost like you're wasting money in the sense of there's no real paper trail. It doesn't really count for anything. That's why in the grand scheme of things, when sometimes people wonder, well, why did they pay this bill over that bill? Well, sadly enough, in today's world, I would rather pay a bill that reflects on my credit report first over one that doesn't. Hopefully, that one that doesn't, I would be able to take care of, let's say, if it ended up defaulting or if it ended up being charged off before it went into collections and started to report on my credit negatively. I'm going to focus on the one that actually reports on my credit first. So Suze Orman has a point because this system is inherently unfair. How ridiculous is it that companies like Equifax and Experian and TransUnion can impact people's lives in a very negative way potentially, or in a very positive way as well? And we don't know exactly how the scoring system works. We get ideas, there's theories, there's hypotheses, but there's no exact hardcore true facts because they will sit there and hide behind the mask of, well, we don't want to let our competitors know, even though all three credit reports report different things, even though all three credit reports use different scoring systems and have different bottom to top scores. No three are exactly the same, so the competitive advantage is a big bullshit argument if I've ever heard it. It is inherently unfair to consumers. This is something that does impact your life all throughout your life because cash is not king anymore, ladies and gentlemen. Credit is. And the old school thought that cash is king, well, that's an old school way of thinking. And if you think like that, it's going to get you buried in today's world. And that's just the reality of it. It is. It absolutely is. And I want you to do me all a favor. As Suze Orman's sitting here and talking about joining her quest and joining her cause for credit equality and to help you out to go sign her petition, please don't. Do not. Understand that while in theory some of what she's saying seems to make sense to you, understand that there are a lot of potentially damaging consequences and repercussions for what she's suggesting, which I argue is her intent all along. Now, let's say you have trouble paying your bills and you have a checkered credit history. Okay? Maybe it sounds like it's a great thing to sit there and have your bank account history report. Well, if you already have bad history, and let's say one time you decide you need to bounce a check, or one time you sit there and cash a check too early, or to withdraw too much money, or whatever the case might be. How disastrous would that be to your credit if it's already not good? To sit there and have every single overdraft or insufficient funds check that's returned, every overdraft transaction from withdrawing out too much money or using the debit card too much. What would happen if every single one of those, was reported on your credit? How disastrous would that be? How disastrous would that be for somebody that actually does have okay or good or really good credit to sit there and let's say one time or twice you had a problem where you had a series of bounced checks or you ended up with a bunch of overdrafts? Now think about it this way. The way the credit cards and some of these other credit agencies are still set up to this day, some of these credit providers, these lenders, there are still some rules on the books, regardless of what they say, that if you default on anything, they will jack up your interest rate with them. I remember Chase used to be notorious for this. Notorious. MBNA back in the day used to be notorious for this too, but Chase especially. If you could sit there and pay your credit card on time every single month, early, during the grace period, didn't matter with Chase, every single month. But if you sit there and let's say you had a Capital One card and one time you defaulted and you wait and got a late fee, they're going to sit there and jack up your interest rate to a default interest rate of like 25, 28%. Think credit companies still won't do that today. You're fucking fooling yourselves. I don't care what laws are on the books or what laws people think are on the books. They'll still do it. So imagine if you sit there and you have a credit score of like 640 or 650. You're good. You're not great, but you could do stuff. You could get stuff done. You're in the wheelhouse of being able to get a vehicle, a decent vehicle, a car, being able to get services and not have to put deposits up front for them. But imagine, let's say, in the course of a year's time, you sit there and you have 2 damn overdrafts. And both of those report on your credit. You really think that positive history is going to carry much weight with the credit reporting agency or with lenders looking at your credit report? Hell no, it's not. The only thing it would be another excuse for a credit lender to ding you. It would be another excuse for a lender to deny you credit. And imagine the fact that when you go on your check system, which Suze Orman, by the way, there is a system called Check Systems that does actually track your checking account history, your debit card usage, your check usage, etc. And usually that stuff reports, I believe, for about 2 to 3 years. It might be up to 5, actually, if I remember correctly. Okay, so you've already got that system in place. Yes, most credit lenders don't check that, but some can. Some can. But we're going to create a system then, according to Suze Orman, where this negative stuff that would stay on your credit report for 7 to 7.5 years is only going to really essentially negatively ding your credit. It's not going to positively help anything. This whole concept of, well, prepaid debit cards should report. No, the fuck they shouldn't. Because those are reloadable at any certain interval, so there's no established credit line, et cetera, et cetera. What happens if a customer has their bank account closed by a bank? Now, did you understand the consequences of what could happen with that? What happens if the customer closes their bank account or switches bank accounts? When you close a credit card and you lose some of that available credit, that could hurt your credit score, no question about it. So we're going to do the same thing whenever you lose a damn bank account or you close a bank account on your own because maybe you had 4 of them and you didn't need one of them anymore? See, it's one of these things that sounds great in theory, but most people will get behind it without really thinking it out and thinking out what the consequences to this ridiculously stupid notion could be. But I think Suze Orman has thought this out perfectly well. Another example of somebody from CNBC doing something that benefits big business and big banks. There's no question about that. That's what that whole entire network and whole network in general, not just Suze Orman, but the entire network as a whole is built on. Is the premise of protecting Wall Street and big businesses and big banks. They love getting in bed with them and giving them the old rubsies, onesie, twosies. Suze Orman knows that if this type of negative history reported, that would lead to an overall reduction in the average credit score of Americans, leading to banks being able to charge higher interest rates, meaning banks would be able to make more money, and then everybody at CNBC is fucking happy. All the while, the common man, the consumer, gets the shaft and gets screwed. And if you think anything other than that is going to happen, you are ridiculous. Just like Suze Orman is ridiculous. If people want something with a prepaid established credit line to help them build credit, knock knock, who's there? Secured. Secured who? Secured credit card, Suze Orman, you stupid bitch. Where you present up front, maybe 500, 1,000, 2,000, whatever it is, and you spend against that credit line, and then you pay back against that established credit line. You know, most secured credit cards that actually report to the credit bureaus. I'm all for trying to address and change the inadequacies and the inequities of the credit reporting system. I want you to understand that clearly. But also understand that when people like Suze Orman, who have a platform that people listen to, she has a pulpit that she can preach from, that people absorb this stuff and think it's the gospel and think they should actually do it. Understand how truly dangerous that really is. Do you really want every single transaction from your bank account being reported? Do you want every single bounce check reported? And not only that, staying on your credit report for 7 or 7.5 years. Do you really want every overdraft reflecting for 7 or 7.5 years? Do you want every time that you close a checking account for that to potentially negatively impact your credit? There are no wins here with this proposal or philosophy from Suze Orman. And I hope people like Senator Elizabeth Warren are smart enough to understand that while the system is broken and desperately needs to be overhauled and improved, this is not the way to go about it. Here's what happens. Big business, big banks win, CNBC is happy, and ultimately the consumer takes the shaft. So Suze Orman and all of your types, please, please do myself and the rest of the consumers in the United States of America a big, huge favor, and please shut the hell up.